Dr. Swati.
Very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Swati Garekar from Mumbai. I'll be talking about the impact of COVID on pediatric cardiology. Ever since the pandemic began and lockdown was first announced in India back in March, we heard a lot of new phrases which have come to stay with us and have become part of our daily lingo. Stay at home, social distancing, mask up, Wuhan, Italy, hoarding food, thali banging, N95, donning, doffing, daily numbers, Coven app, online school, online conferences, Zoom app, steroid, RT-PCR, rapid antigen, first, second, third wave, beta, theta, delta, vaccine, and of course, anti-vaxxers. What about pediatric cardiology then? What we saw was that less earnings and savings for the average Indian family combined with absence of medical camps and absence of peripheral OPDs and lockdown meaning patients couldn't travel to us translated to empty OPDs, which obviously meant empty OT and cath lab slots. What didn't help were government rules about elective procedures, our concerns about COVID affecting outcomes, less funds for patients, pediatric cardiac ICU used as COVID ICU, and sick colleagues and families. This meant patients were denied care, and when patients did show up, they were sicker. Empty OT and cath lab slots also meant free time for us. Our families saw us more, but for some of us, it meant COVID duty. Less pediatric cardiac patients, however, also meant less training for trainees, waste of the year perhaps, postponing and graduation of important life events. Exam becomes a question mark, and there's a question about the impact on future career and job opportunities. What also happened was less revenue generated from our division, with an impact on pays and less capex. Last but not the least, non COVID research came to a standstill. The other implications were a lot of kids complaining of chest pain and palpitations and presenting with obesity. Could this be the result of absolutely no playing down and an overdose of TV and mobile networking and unhealthy eating? Pretty much. We saw an increase in the number of virtual consultations. The most positive impact, or the positive impact, if any, of the COVID was that the portable pulse oximeter has become a household word. Everybody knows about it. We can use the heart rate for our patients with complaints of chest pain or palpitations. It's like an event recorder if you couple it with a WhatsApp video. And certainly, PCSI can use this now as a correct time to pitch for newborn screening with the pulse oximeter for cyanotic heart defects. Let's look at the mortality and morbidity associated with COVID and CHT. First, this study from Europe, 105 patients, grown up with with congenital heart defects with a positive RT-PCR, they found that there was a higher chance of complications, which they defined as invasive or non-invasive ventilation, need or use of inotropes or ECMO or death. So higher chance of complications as patient's age was higher, or there were more than two comorbidities, or the patient was obese, and certainly if there was cyanotic heart defect. So there you go, direct correlation between COVID and presence of CHT. Now this study was not an adult study, it was an overall study of patients with CHT in India, published very recently by Mrigang Chaubey et al. A retrospective multicentric observational study from 24 participating centers. They looked at the OPD and the cath OT numbers. They found a 60 to 70% drop in the COVID era compared to the pre COVID era as expected. What they also had was interesting mortality data. Look at this table. So, if we look at the mortality rate, post operative mortality rate, and the in hospital mortality rate in the pre COVID and the COVID era, we find a doubling of mortality. Scary. The authors said that perhaps there was a greater proportion of complex surgeries and neonatal surgeries and emergency surgeries. That is why the numbers were higher. They also speculated that perhaps patients had active or recent COVID infection. So, why would active or recent COVID infection lead to a higher mortality? COVID can impact the heart in a lot of ways. We look at the top four. So there's arrhythmias, Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, COVID myocarditis, and thrombi. There are others too, but we look at these. MISC is being discussed separately. So arrhythmias can be pretty benign with ectopic beats or incidentally detected bradycardia, non-specific T and ST segment changes. One could have drug-induced prolonged QT and torsades or remdesivir-induced bradycardia. There could be tachycardia alternating with bradycardia, sinus bradycardia, bundle branch block, or complete heart block. Mechanisms have been postulated to be autonomic nervous dysfunction, medications, hypoxemia, or inflammation. This particular study, published earlier this year, looked at bradycardias and they found amongst this group there was around a 47% incidence of third degree heart block. This is an adult study. Half of these patients ended up needing a pacemaker, half of them resolved spontaneously. There was also sinus node dysfunction and second degree heart block noted. Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, as you are very well aware, is a diagnosis of exclusion where the epicardial coronaries are normal on angiography. There might be spasm of them, there might be microvascular dysfunction and increased sympathetic activity, leading to LV dysfunction seen as apical ballooning on echo. This has been described in pediatrics as well in this COVID times and typically, luckily, resolves spontaneously in 1 or 2 months. Let's look at myocarditis with COVID. So, why myocardial injury by COVID? Well, the virus can directly enter the cardiomyocyte using those receptors. There could be hypoxia from lung disease affecting the function of the heart cell. Some COVID drugs are cardiotoxic, and there's cytokine release in response to the virus that hurts the cell. So the virus actually binds to the cell using the ACE2 receptor. There was a controversy about the use of ACE inhibitors in COVID pandemic times, but it was proven to be um, not affecting by RCT. Let's look at thrombosis in COVID. For sure, the Furcow's triad exists in COVID. There's endothelial injury, secondary to inflammation and cytokine storm, and even direct invasion by the virus. There's blood flow stasis, whether you are bedridden or you have a high hematocrit from a cyanotic heart defect, and there are clotting issues. COVID thrombosis is distinct from that seen in sepsis and DIC. COVID tends to have a high D dimer, which is why when your D dimer levels are 10 times as much, you end up being placed on a anti clotting agent. Also, COVID sees less of low platelet. Acute limb ischemia is very important enough to have to be a topic by itself in up to date COVID section. This is a case series published recently of patients who presented with acute limb ischemia. There were 49 of them. The legs were most commonly affected, and then the hands. The case series concluded that this acute limb ischemia secondary to peripheral thrombosis may follow COVID of any severity. It may occur in the recovery phase. The thrombi may be in large or medium sized vessels, and it's best to involve hemat and plastic surgery sooner than later. Our own experience was with a 5-year-old with tetralogy who had underwent BT shunt a lot earlier, came to us for a complete repair. Post-op day 2 in morning rounds, we noticed that the IV was out, it was removed. Instead of there being a resolution of the mild edema, to our horror, there was worsening, there was discoloration, there was coolness of the limbs, and sonography confirmed our worst fears. Not only was there venous thrombosis, there was brachial artery thrombosis as well. COVID antibody titer was Fasciotomy was done, hyperbaric oxygen therapy was tried. The child went home with fingers amputated. Case 2 was a 4-month-old infant with single ventricle PS. He was very blue and got an emergency bidirectional Glenn shunt done. POD1, the sister nurse informed us that the femoral artery was not working. We removed it. To our horror, we saw patches on the right leg consistent with disturbed arterial supply. The sonography confirmed that there was a thrombus in the femoral artery. We did a CT scan as well. We ended up using IV heparin infusion and also NTG spray. Luckily, the child had a good outcome. Since then, we've been having a CRP in every patient preoperatively and also sending COVID antibodies. There are case reports of ST segment elevation myocardial infarction documented in adolescents. This particular case had a thrombus seen on the coronary angiography, but no plasty was done. They were treated with medications. So, what do we do when there's an unexpected thrombus? We image early and we get tests early and we treat early. I'm going to end with this case of a 4-year-old girl with aortic atresia, duct dependent systemic circulation. We did a biventricular repair. This is a preoperative echo. The tiny dot here is the aorta. Postoperatively, we dealt with fever spikes and a CRP of 360, extremely high CRP, blood culture negative, no vegetations on echo. But she continued spiking despite antibiotics. COVID antibody was strongly positive, very high titer. We re-looked at the echo, they were dilated coronaries. We struggled between the correct dose of steroids, settled for small dose steroids. The CRP fell, the child went home fine. What can we learn from this pandemic? Follow science, mask up for a respiratory pandemic, certainly, and most importantly, think outside the box. Look for zebras too in a pandemic. Thank you.
Uh, Thank you, Dr. Swati, for this excellent talk. You have elucidated on